My name is Jessica. I am 32 years old and work as a financial advisor in Pennsylvania. Despite living alone, family always came first for me. Today, I decided to surprise them with a homemade cake after 5 years of them forgetting my birthday. No calls, no cards, nothing. When my sister Amanda opened her door and saw me standing there with my cake, she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Wrong house." Through the crack in the door, I glimpsed my entire family gathered inside. That moment changed everything. I want to tell you how I accessed our shared accounts, blocked wedding funds, and sent a letter that finally made them remember. If you are watching this, drop a comment telling me where you are from, hit that like and subscribe button, and stick around to see what happens when someone finally decides enough is enough. Growing up in suburban Pennsylvania, I was the middle child between my older sister Amanda, now 34, and my younger brother Ethan, who just turned 30. My mom Margaret worked as an accountant while my dad Thomas was an engineer. Our family was comfortable financially, but emotional comfort was another story entirely. Being the middle child meant I was caught in a strange position. Amanda was the firstborn, ambitious and outgoing. She commanded attention with her dance recitals and social achievements. Ethan was the baby of the family, the only boy, and naturally received special treatment. He played baseball and my parents never missed a single game. Meanwhile, I was studious and responsible, often left to fend for myself emotionally. I remember bringing home straight A report cards that would get a quick glance and a "That's nice, Jessica," before conversation turned to Amanda's latest accomplishment or Ethan's newest interest. It hurt, but I told myself that was just how families worked. Someone always gets a little less attention. My childhood birthdays were celebrated, but they always seemed like afterthoughts. My parents would get me a cake and a few gifts, but there was never the same enthusiasm they showed for my siblings. For Amanda's 16th birthday, they threw a huge party with all her friends and hired a DJ. For Ethan's, they surprised him with his first car. For my 16th, we had dinner at home and they gave me a sweater. The pattern became more obvious as we grew older. When I graduated high school as valedictorian, I was thrilled that my moment had finally come. I practiced my speech for weeks, hoping to make my parents proud. The day before graduation, Amanda announced her engagement to her boyfriend James. Suddenly, my graduation became a dual celebration with most of the focus on Amanda's upcoming wedding. My graduation party was rushed, so the family could start planning the wedding. What should have been my day became a footnote in Amanda's love story. I swallowed my disappointment and smiled in all the photos. Later, when I received a prestigious scholarship to study finance at a top university, my parents seemed distracted. "That's great, honey," my mom said, before turning to discuss Ethan's college applications. He was 2 years behind me, but already getting more guidance and support for his future than I ever did. Despite these patterns, I never stopped hoping for stronger family connections. I chose finance as my career partly because I genuinely loved working with numbers, but also because I thought making my parents proud of my success might finally get their attention. After college, I landed a job at a respected financial firm about 2 hours from my hometown. The distance was perfect, close enough to visit regularly, but far enough to build my own life. I made it a point to drive home for every holiday and important family event. I would bring thoughtful gifts for birthdays and Christmas, remembering everyone's preferences and sizes. When I got my first apartment in the city, I hosted family gatherings, cooking elaborate meals, and making sure everyone felt welcome. As my career advanced, I began helping my family with their finances. I set up retirement accounts for my parents, offering professional advice that would have cost them thousands with another advisor. When Ethan struggled with student loans after changing majors 3 times, I restructured his debt and created a payment plan he could manage. When Amanda needed help understanding investment options for her children's education, I spent hours researching the best plans for my niece and nephew. Beyond my immediate family, I maintained close relationships with my extended family too. My Aunt Laura, my mother's sister, always treated me with special kindness. My cousins Michael and Sophia would often visit my apartment in the city for shopping weekends or museum trips. Uncle David, my father's brother, would seek my advice on business matters, respecting my financial expertise. But the one person who truly saw me was my grandmother Rose, my father's mother. Whenever I visited her, she would take my hand and say, "Jessica, you have such a beautiful heart. Don't ever lose that." She remembered every accomplishment, kept every card I sent her, and called me regularly just to chat. When she passed away when I was 26, I felt like I had lost my greatest ally in the family. At her funeral, I discovered she had left me her wedding ring and her will, with a note saying I was the one who would truly value its sentimental worth. That ring became my most treasured possession, a reminder that at least one family member had truly seen and appreciated me. After Grandmother Rose passed, I threw myself even more into being the perfect daughter and sister. I never missed sending cards for birthdays and anniversaries. I remembered everyone's favorite foods and would bring them as gifts when visiting. I offered financial advice freely and helped manage family accounts with professional care. I thought if I just gave enough, eventually they would see me too. I was wrong. The pattern of forgotten birthdays began 5 years ago, just after I turned 27. I had recently been promoted at work, and I was excited to share my good news with my family. My birthday fell on a Tuesday that year, and while I didn't expect a party on a weekday, I at least thought I would receive phone calls or text messages. I woke up that morning with the usual birthday excitement. I checked my phone immediately, no messages. I told myself it was still early and people would reach out later. I got ready for work, checking my phone repeatedly, but the only birthday wishes came from automated emails from stores where I had loyalty accounts. By lunchtime, my heart felt heavy. Not a single family member had reached out. I considered calling them but thought it might seem needy. Maybe they were planning a surprise. By evening, after a full day of silence, I finally called my mother. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Jessica." "Hello, dear. Is everything okay?" she asked, sounding concerned that I would call on a weekday evening. "Everything is fine. I was just wondering if you remembered what today is." There was a pause, then a gasp. "Oh, it is your birthday today, isn't it? I am so sorry, sweetheart. With your father's doctor appointment and that issue at work, it completely slipped my mind." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "It is okay. I understand everyone gets busy. We will make it up to you this weekend," she promised. "Come over for dinner on Saturday and I will make your favorite lasagna." That Saturday dinner happened, but it felt obligatory. My father barely looked up from his newspaper to mutter, "Happy belated birthday." Amanda brought a store-bought cake that still had the reduced price sticker on the box. Ethan gave me a gift card to a coffee shop I never visited. The entire celebration lasted less than an hour before everyone suddenly remembered other commitments. I drove home telling myself that it was just a busy time for everyone. One forgotten birthday didn't mean anything. The second year, when I was about to turn 28, I decided to be proactive. 2 weeks before my birthday, during a family dinner, I casually mentioned, "My birthday is coming up soon. I was thinking maybe we could go to that new Italian restaurant that opened downtown." Everyone at the table nodded. My mother said, "That sounds lovely. We will have to check our schedules." Amanda mentioned that the restaurant had gotten good reviews. Ethan said he had heard the pasta was excellent. They acknowledged my upcoming birthday, and I felt reassured. But when my birthday arrived again, there was silence. No calls, no texts, not even an email. That evening, confused and hurt, I called my brother Ethan, thinking he might be more forthcoming than my parents. "Hey, Ethan, just checking in." "Hey, Jess, what is up?" He sounded distracted with a game playing in the background. "I was wondering if you had forgotten something today." There was a pause, then a forced laugh. "Oh man, was that today? We thought it was next week for some reason. Sorry about that. I specifically mentioned it at dinner 2 weeks ago." I reminded him, my voice tight. "Did you? I guess we got the dates mixed up. My bad." The conversation ended awkwardly, and no belated celebration was offered that time. I spent the evening alone in my apartment, trying to understand how my entire family could collectively forget something I had explicitly mentioned. By the third year, when I was turning 29, I decided to leave nothing to chance. A month before my birthday, I sent calendar invites to my entire family, with my birthday highlighted, and even added a note suggesting a simple family dinner. My father replied to the invite with, "Confirmed, added to calendar." My mother texted saying she had put it on the family calendar in the kitchen. Amanda and Ethan both acknowledged receiving the invite. Yet on my actual birthday, not a single acknowledgement came. Not one call, text, or email. That evening, I called my sister Amanda. "Amanda, did you see it was my birthday today?" "Oh, was that today?" Her voice held no genuine surprise. "We have been so busy planning my daughter's baby shower that it must have slipped our minds. You know how it is with little Sophia turning 4 soon." "I sent calendar invites," I said flatly. "Dad confirmed he added it to his calendar." "Well, you know how technology can be unreliable," she replied dismissively. "Anyway, we will have to do something another time. The next few weekends are packed with shower preparations." No alternative date was suggested. No apology was offered. The conversation moved immediately to how I could help with her daughter's baby shower finances. The fourth year, my 30th birthday, was the one that really broke my heart. Turning 30 is a milestone, and despite the pattern of the previous years, I held a small hope that this one would be different. In the weeks leading up to it, I mentioned my birthday repeatedly during family calls and visits. I am turning 30 next week, I would say. It feels like a big one. My mother would nod and say, 30 is certainly a milestone. My father would grunt in acknowledgement. But no plans were made. No questions about what I might want to do to celebrate. On my 30th birthday, I received birthday wishes from colleagues, friends, and even my dental office, but nothing from my family. That evening, I called my parents, no longer hiding my hurt. I cannot believe you forgot my birthday again. This is the fourth year in a row. My mother sounded uncomfortable. We did not forget Jessica. We just thought you would want to celebrate with your friends since it is a big one. You know, go out dancing or whatever young people do. You threw surprise parties for both Amanda and Ethan when they turned 30? I pointed out, my voice breaking. Amanda's lasted the entire weekend and cost thousands of dollars. You flew in relatives from across the country for Ethan's. There was an uncomfortable silence. Well, they have always been more social than you. We did not think you would want that kind of attention. The conversation ended with vague promises to do something soon, but nothing ever materialized. By the fifth year at 31, I had lower expectations but still hoped for at least an acknowledgement. A text message would have been enough. But again, complete silence. When I eventually confronted them, each family member gave a different excuse. My father claimed he had been swamped with a project at work. My mother said she thought my birthday was the following week. Amanda blamed her children's busy schedules for distracting her. Ethan said he had meant to call, but his phone broke. Their excuses might have been believable if they happened once, but 5 years in a row, and if they truly cared, wouldn't at least one of them have remembered? What made it even more suspicious was how they remembered and celebrated other minor events and milestones for each other. They never missed Amanda's wedding anniversary, sending elaborate gifts and organizing dinners. They remembered the day Ethan closed on his house, celebrating it each year with a small gathering. They even commemorated the day my father's favorite baseball team won the World Series 10 years ago, an annual tradition with special team-themed snacks. My suspicions grew when I was scrolling through social media one evening and came across photos my niece had posted from the previous year. The timestamp showed they were from my birthday, and they showed my entire family gathered at Amanda's house for what looked like a celebration. There were balloons, a cake, and everyone was smiling. Everyone except me, because I hadn't been invited. That was when I knew for certain. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was deliberate exclusion. After discovering those photos, I decided to investigate further to confirm my suspicions. The next time I visited my parents' home, I noticed my mother's phone on the kitchen counter while she was in the garden. I had never invaded her privacy before, but my need for the truth overrode my principles in that moment. I picked up her phone and checked her calendar app. There were birthday reminders for everyone in the family. My father, Amanda, Ethan, all three of Amanda's children, even birthdays for more distant relatives and family friends. But there was nothing for me. Not on my birthday, not on any day nearby. My birthday had not been forgotten. It had been deliberately omitted. While replacing the phone, I overheard my mother and Amanda talking in the garden. "Do you think we should do something about Jessica's birthday situation this year?" My mother asked, her voice low. Amanda's response was dismissive. "Why start now? It has been 5 years and she has not made a big deal about it. If we suddenly acknowledge it, it will just raise questions about the past few years." "I suppose you are right," my mother sighed. "It just feels wrong sometimes." "She will be fine," Amanda said firmly. "Jessica is always fine on her own." I stood frozen in the kitchen, their words confirming what I had suspected, but hoped wasn't true. This was a conscious decision, not a series of innocent mistakes. A few weeks later, Ethan accidentally revealed more during a phone call when he mentioned a family dinner they had all attended. "When was this dinner?" I asked casually. "Last month on the 17th, he replied, then quickly changed the subject. The 17th had been my birthday. They hadn't forgotten my birthday. They had celebrated without me. The weight of these realizations led me to start therapy. My therapist, Dr. Melanie Wright, helped me see the pattern of emotional neglect that had characterized my family relationships for years. "What you are describing sounds like systematic exclusion," she said gently. "The question is, why would your family choose to exclude you specifically from celebration?" That question led me to reflect on my role in the family. Over the years, I had helped them all financially in significant ways. I had set up and managed investment accounts for my parents' retirement, ensuring they would be comfortable in their later years. I had created college funds for Amanda's children, contributing a portion of my own savings to give my niece and nephew educational opportunities. I had helped Ethan secure favorable mortgage terms when he bought his house, using my professional connections to get him a rate he couldn't have qualified for otherwise. In all these accounts, I was listed as a financial advisor or had some level of access. Not because I wanted control, but because it allowed me to provide ongoing management and advice without charging them the fees other clients paid. Despite all this help, they had chosen to exclude me from one of the most basic forms of family acknowledgement, celebrating my birthday. The realization crushed me. One evening, after seeing new photos of another family gathering I hadn't been invited to, I broke down completely. I sat on my kitchen floor, sobbing until my throat was raw, feeling like a ghost in my own family, present when needed for financial help, but invisible when it came to celebration and inclusion. After 5 years of this treatment, I decided to confront the situation directly on my upcoming 32nd birthday. I took the day off work and spent hours baking a beautiful chocolate cake with vanilla buttercream frosting, the kind my family always requested when I hosted gatherings. I decorated it with fresh berries and chocolate shavings, making it look as professional as the cakes we used to buy from the expensive bakery downtown. I didn't announce my visit. I knew from our family group text that everyone gathered at Amanda's house most Saturdays for lunch. My birthday fell on a Saturday that year, which seemed perfect for a surprise visit. I carefully boxed the cake and drove the 2 hours to Amanda's suburban home, rehearsing what I would say when they opened the door. When I arrived, the driveway was full: my parents' sedan, Ethan's SUV, and two cars I recognized as belonging to my Aunt Laura and Uncle David. The house looked lively with lights on, despite it being daytime and the sound of laughter drifting through an open window. My heart raced as I approached the door, cake balanced carefully in my hands. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. The laughter inside quieted and footsteps approached. The door opened and Amanda stood there, initially with a welcoming smile that quickly morphed into shock when she saw me. Her eyes darted from my face to the cake in my hands and back again. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then, in a voice so cold it still chills me to remember it, she said, "Wrong house." Through the gap in the partially closed door, I glimpsed my entire family seated around Amanda's dining table. There were decorations hanging from the ceiling and what looked like party plates and cups. My father was mid-laugh, my mother was passing a platter of food, and Ethan was pouring drinks. They were having a party on my birthday to which I hadn't been invited. Before I could respond, Amanda closed the door firmly in my face. I stood there frozen in disbelief, a beautifully decorated cake in my hands and tears welling in my eyes. The finality of that door closing told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't neglect or forgetfulness. This was intentional cruelty. I returned to my car in a daze, placing the untouched cake on the passenger seat. The 2-hour drive home was a blur of tears and racing thoughts. By the time I reached my apartment, something had shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, but it was now accompanied by a cold clarity. This had gone on long enough, and it was time for me to take action. That night, as I sat alone with my untouched birthday cake, I reviewed years of similar treatment instances where I had been overlooked, excluded, or taken for granted. Each memory added fuel to my resolve. This wasn't about a missed birthday anymore. This was about standing up for myself after years of allowing myself to be invisible. I decided that my family needed to understand that their actions had consequences. And as a financial advisor with access to multiple family accounts, I was uniquely positioned to deliver that message. With my professional background in finance and my role as the family's financial advisor, I had legitimate access to various family accounts. I want to be clear, what I did next was entirely legal and within my authority as their financial advisor. I didn't steal money or commit fraud. I simply exercised options that were available to me within the bounds of my professional role. First, I reviewed exactly what access I had to each account. My parents had appointed me as the manager of their non-essential investment portfolio funds, separate from their retirement accounts that were earmarked for vacations and luxury purchases. Amanda had me overseeing the wedding fund for her oldest daughter, who would be getting married in about 18 months. Ethan had given me access to his vacation savings account to help him maximize interest. These weren't their emergency funds or money needed for daily expenses. These were discretionary accounts I had helped them set up, contributed to in some cases, and managed for years without charging them the fees I would normally charge clients. After confirming my legal rights regarding these accounts, I proceeded to freeze them. Not withdraw the money, not transfer it to myself, just freeze the accounts so they couldn't be accessed temporarily. For my parents' investment portfolio, I placed a temporary administrative hold, citing the need for account review. For the wedding fund, I initiated a standard security verification process that would take several days to complete. For Ethan's vacation account, I flagged it for suspicious activity review, a standard procedure that would resolve itself, but would take time. Again, I want to emphasize that I didn't take any money. I simply created a situation where they would have to contact me to regain access to these non-essential funds. Next, I drafted a formal letter. I spent hours making sure it was factual, clear, and free from emotional language that might undermine my message. The letter outlined the pattern of exclusion over the past 5 years, with specific dates and instances where my birthday had been forgotten, while other, less significant events were celebrated. I included screenshots of social media posts showing family gatherings on my birthday to which I hadn't been invited. I added text messages where they had made excuses for forgetting. I even included photos of the calendar in my mother's phone showing every family birthday except mine. The letter concluded with a simple statement: "For 5 years you have chosen to exclude me from family celebrations, specifically and repeatedly forgetting my birthday while remembering everyone else's. Today, when I came to celebrate with you bringing a homemade cake as a peace offering, I was told I had the wrong house, while I could clearly see everyone gathered inside. This pattern of behavior has made it clear where I stand in this family. As I have been your financial advisor and helped manage your accounts without charging the fees I would normally require of clients, I have temporarily restricted access to the discretionary accounts I manage until we can have a family meeting to discuss this situation. This is not theft. The money remains in your accounts. Consider it an administrative hold until we resolve this matter." I made identical copies of this letter, placed them in formal business envelopes, and sent them via certified mail to ensure delivery to my parents, Amanda and Ethan. I also temporarily blocked their numbers on my phone. Not because I didn't want to hear from them eventually, but because I wanted them to have time to read the letters and reflect on their actions before we spoke. There was one family member I did reach out to, my grandmother's sister, Aunt Eleanor, who had always been kind to me. I called her and explained what had happened and what I had done. To my surprise, she wasn't shocked. "Jessica, dear," she said gently, "I have worried about how they treat you for years." "You knew?" I asked, stunned. "I suspected. Your grandmother Rose talked to me about it before she passed. She noticed how they would light up when Amanda or Ethan entered a room but barely acknowledge you despite all you did for the family." "But why?" I asked the question that had haunted me for years. "What did I do to deserve this?" Aunt Eleanor sighed heavily. "It started about 6 years ago from what I understand. Amanda wanted to start a business, that organic skincare line she was talking about. She asked you for a loan, a significant amount if I remember correctly." I remembered the conversation. Amanda had asked for $50,000 as startup capital for a business she had no experience in. I had offered to help her create a business plan and secure a proper business loan instead. She had stormed off, calling me selfish. "After you declined," Aunt Eleanor continued, "Amanda told everyone you were selfish and ungrateful, that you had plenty of money but wouldn't help family. Never mind that you have helped them financially in so many other ways. So this has all been punishment because I wouldn't give Amanda $50,000 for a business that never even materialized?" I asked incredulously. "That seems to be the start of it, but I think there's more. Your success makes some of them uncomfortable. Your mother always expected Amanda to be the successful one, being the oldest, and you know your father always favored Ethan, being his only son. You exceeded everyone's expectations, and rather than being proud, they resented it." The conversation with Aunt Eleanor confirmed what I had suspected, but couldn't quite believe this wasn't about birthdays. It was about resentment, jealousy, and a family dynamic that had labeled me as the outsider despite everything I had contributed. Before ending my call with Aunt Eleanor, I assured her that I wasn't stealing anyone's money and that my actions were legally within my rights as their financial advisor. She understood and supported my decision to finally stand up for myself. After sending the letters, I also consulted with a legal advisor, presenting the documentation of my role in each account and the communications I had sent. He confirmed that what I had done was within legal bounds, though he cautioned me to be prepared for angry reactions. "You haven't done anything illegal," he assured me, "but family disputes rarely stay rational. Be prepared for accusations and threats that go beyond the actual situation. With my letters sent, accounts temporarily frozen, and legal position confirmed, I gave my family 1 week to process everything before I would follow up. That week would turn out to be one of the most emotionally turbulent of my life. The fallout began less than 24 hours after the letters would have been delivered. My office phone rang repeatedly with calls from my family members, which I didn't answer. I had instructed our receptionist to take messages, but to explain I was unavailable. The messages ranged from my mother's tearful pleas to my father's cold demands to Amanda's outright threats. "Jessica, this is your mother. Please call me back. We need to talk about this misunderstanding." "Jessica, this is your father. What you are doing is completely unprofessional. Call me immediately to resolve this." "Jessica, this is Amanda. If you don't unfreeze that wedding fund immediately, I am calling my lawyer. This is theft, and you will regret it." On the second day, my mother showed up at my apartment. I watched through the peephole as she knocked repeatedly, calling my name. I didn't open the door. As much as it hurt to ignore her, I knew that facing her alone would likely result in me backing down, accepting weak excuses, and allowing the pattern to continue. Amanda escalated her threats, sending emails claiming she was consulting with attorneys about pressing charges. I forwarded these to my own legal advisor, who reassured me that her threats were baseless, given my legal authority over the accounts. Ethan took a different approach, sending a text that managed to reach me on my work phone. "Jess, everyone is freaking out. Can we just talk about this calmly? I know you are hurt, but freezing accounts is extreme." I didn't respond to any of them. This was the first time in my life I had ever truly stood my ground with my family, and despite the anxiety it caused, there was also a strange sense of relief in finally addressing what had been happening for years. Extended family members began reaching out too clearly, having been given a version of events that portrayed me as having a mental breakdown or acting vindictively. My Aunt Laura called my office sounding concerned. "Jessica, sweetie, we are all worried about you. This doesn't sound like you at all. If you are struggling with something, we want to help." My Uncle David, always more direct, left a blunt message. "Jessica, whatever issue you have with your parents and siblings involving money is never the answer. Call me and let's sort this out like adults." Throughout this barrage of contact attempts, I maintained my distance but monitored the situation closely. I saved every voicemail, email, and text message, adding them to my documentation of the entire situation. I also continued my sessions with Dr. Wright, who helped me process the swirl of emotions I was experiencing. "What you are feeling is normal," she assured me. "There is grief for the family relationship you thought you had, doubt about your decision, anxiety about the confrontation, but also relief at finally addressing the situation directly." During that week, I experienced moments of intense doubt. Had I gone too far? Was I overreacting to what could just be thoughtlessness rather than deliberate cruelty? But then I would remember standing on Amanda's porch, seeing my entire family gathered without me on my birthday, and hearing her say, "Wrong house," before closing the door in my face. That wasn't thoughtlessness. That was calculated exclusion. After exactly 1 week, as I had planned, I sent a follow-up email to everyone involved outlining my terms for resolution. "I am ready to discuss unfreezing the accounts and moving forward, but only under the following conditions. 1. A family meeting with everyone present, parents, Amanda and Ethan. 2. Acknowledgement of the pattern of exclusion that has been happening for the past 5 years. 3. A genuine apology from each family member involved. 4. A commitment to change future behavior. I am available this Saturday at 2 p.m. at Riverside Cafe, a public location where we can have this conversation calmly and without interruption. Please confirm your attendance. If you choose not to attend, the accounts will remain frozen while I explore other options for resolving this situation." The responses came quickly. Amanda initially refused, claiming she would only communicate through her attorney. My parents reluctantly agreed, though my father's email was curt and clearly angry. Ethan responded most positively, offering to help coordinate everyone's attendance and suggesting he could pick up our parents to ensure they would be there. After some back and forth with Ethan acting as an intermediary, Amanda finally agreed to attend as well, though she insisted her husband James would accompany her. I agreed to this on the condition that he would be there as a support person only, and would not speak for her during our discussion. In the days leading up to the meeting, I prepared extensively with Dr. Wright, developing strategies for staying calm and focused, regardless of how my family responded. "Remember," she advised, "this meeting is not about winning or punishing them. It's about being heard, acknowledged, and changing the dynamic moving forward. The day of the meeting arrived, and I dressed carefully in professional attire, wanting to project confidence and composure. I arrived at the cafe early, selecting a table in a quiet corner that would afford us some privacy. I had brought copies of all my documentation neatly organized in a folder. When my family arrived, the tension was palpable. My mother looked like she had been crying. My father's jaw was set in a hard line. Amanda entered with James close behind her, her expression a mixture of anger and defensiveness. Ethan looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting between everyone, as if trying to assess who might explode first. As they sat down, no one spoke for several long moments. I took a deep breath and broke the silence. "Thank you for coming. I know this is difficult, but it is necessary." My father immediately cut in. "Let's cut to the chase, Jessica. When will you unfreeze the accounts? This has gone on long enough." I met his gaze steadily. "The accounts will be unfrozen when we have addressed the real issue here, which isn't about money at all." "What is it about then?" Amanda demanded. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like extortion." Instead of responding with anger, I opened my folder and began methodically presenting my evidence. Screenshots of calendar entries showing every family birthday except mine. Text messages showing their different excuses for forgetting year after year. Social media posts revealing family gatherings on my birthday to which I hadn't been invited. And finally, a clear photograph of Amanda's door taken the moment before she closed it in my face, clearly showing family members gathered inside. As I presented each piece of evidence, I kept my voice even and factual. This is not about one forgotten birthday. This is about 5 years of deliberate exclusion. This is about me standing on a porch with a homemade cake and being told I had the wrong house when I could clearly see all of you inside. My mother began to cry silently. My father stared at the table, no longer meeting my eyes. Amanda's posture remained defensive, but some of the fire had gone out of her expression. Ethan looked genuinely shocked at the compilation of evidence, as if seeing the pattern clearly for the first time. I continued, my voice finally betraying some of the emotion I felt. "For years, I have been the family member who remembers everyone's birthdays, who helps with financial planning, who shows up for every event I'm invited to. And in return, you have collectively decided that I don't deserve even the most basic acknowledgement of my existence on my birthday. I want to understand why." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken truths. Then, unexpectedly, it was Amanda who spoke first. "It started because of the loan," she admitted, her voice tight. "When you wouldn't help me with my business idea. I was angry, and I told everyone you were selfish and didn't care about family despite your financial success." "A business that never even launched," I pointed out quietly. She had the grace to look somewhat ashamed. "I know, but at the time it felt like rejection, like you didn't believe in me." My mother spoke next, her voice small. "When Amanda was upset, we wanted to support her. It started as just not making a big deal of your birthday that year, but then it became easier to continue than to explain why we had done it in the first place. So you chose to keep hurting me rather than admit you had made a mistake." I asked, disbelief coloring my words. My father cleared his throat. "We didn't think it was hurting you that much. You never said anything, never made a scene. You always seemed fine on your own." "I never said anything because I couldn't believe my own family would deliberately exclude me," I replied. "I kept making excuses for you in my head, telling myself it must be innocent forgetfulness or busy schedules. I never imagined you were actually gathering without me celebrating while telling me I had the wrong house when I showed up with a cake I had spent hours making." Ethan spoke up for the first time. "I went along with it because it was easier than standing up to them. I'm sorry, Jess. I should have said something." As the conversation continued, more painful truths emerged. I discovered other ways I had been excluded over the years. Family vacations had been planned during times they knew I would be working, with no attempt to find dates that would include me. Holiday gatherings had sometimes been rescheduled at the last minute without informing me, resulting in me showing up at empty houses or missing celebrations entirely. They had a family group chat I had never been added to, where they coordinated events and shared daily life updates. Each revelation felt like a fresh wound, but also like the lancing of a long, festering infection. The truth, as painful as it was finally coming out. As my family's confessions and justifications tumbled out, I maintained my composure, determined to hear the full truth. Amanda admitted that she had been the main instigator of the birthday boycott after I declined to invest in her business venture. I felt like you were saying I wasn't good enough. She explained, her voice a mixture of defensiveness and emerging remorse. You had this great career and financial stability, and when I finally asked for help with something important to me, you said no. I offered to help you create a business plan and apply for a proper business loan, I reminded her. I didn't say no to supporting you. I said no to giving you $50,000 with no business plan, no experience in that industry, and no clear path to success. She looked down at her hands. Maybe, but it felt like rejection at the time. My mother, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, confessed her role. After Amanda was so upset I wanted to support her, we decided to just not make a big deal of your birthday that year. But then the next year came and it seemed like it would be awkward to suddenly celebrate after ignoring it before, so we just continued. You continued to hurt me to avoid an awkward conversation, I asked, struggling to keep the incredulity from my voice. When you put it that way, it sounds terrible, my mother admitted. Because it is terrible, Mom, I replied. How would you feel if Dad decided to stop acknowledging your birthday for 5 years straight? My father, who had been largely silent, shifted uncomfortably. We didn't think it bothered you that much. You always seemed so independent, so self-sufficient. Self-sufficient doesn't mean I don't have feelings, I said. It doesn't mean I want to be excluded from my own family. Ethan, looking genuinely ashamed, admitted his part. I knew it was wrong, but it was easier to go along with it than to stand up to them. I told myself it wasn't a big deal, that you probably celebrated with your friends anyway. Even if I did celebrate with friends, why would that make it okay for my family to pretend my birthday doesn't exist? I asked him directly. He had no answer for that. I turned to each of them individually, addressing the specific pain each had caused. To my mother, I said, You are my mother. You gave birth to me. How could you participate in deliberately hurting me year after year? You were supposed to protect me, not be the source of pain. She crumpled further, unable to meet my eyes. To Amanda, I was direct. Your vindictiveness has damaged our relationship in ways that might never be repaired. Over what money for a business that never even happened? Was punishing me worth destroying our sisterhood? Amanda's defiant facade began to crack. I was jealous, she admitted quietly. You have always had everything together. Great job, financial stability, your own place. I was struggling with 2 kids, a mortgage, trying to find some independence. When you said no to the business loan, it felt like you were keeping me down. To Ethan, my words were tinged with disappointment. You always came to me when you needed help with loans, with financial advice, with career guidance. I was there for you every time, but you couldn't stand up for me even once in 5 years. I was a coward, he admitted plainly. There's no other word for it. Finally, to my father, I expressed the hurt of a daughter who had sought approval her entire life. Dad, I went into finance partly because I thought it would make you proud. I have worked so hard to be someone you could respect, but you couldn't even acknowledge my birthday. Do you have any idea how that feels? For the first time, I saw my father's eyes grow wet. I have failed as a father, he said gruffly. There's no excuse for it. As harsh as my words were, I also acknowledged areas where I could have communicated better. I should have confronted this years ago instead of making excuses for your behavior in my head. I kept hoping if I just tried harder, was more successful, more helpful, more present, you would eventually see me and include me. That was my mistake. The conversation continued for hours, raw and honest, in a way our family had never been before. There were tears-raised voices at times and painful silences. But beneath it all, something was shifting. The carefully maintained facade of family harmony was cracking, revealing the dysfunctional patterns that had been operating beneath the surface for years. The breakthrough came unexpectedly through my mother. After a particularly painful recounting of how I had felt standing alone on Amanda's porch with my birthday cake, my mother broke down completely. I am so sorry, Jessica, she sobbed, no longer trying to maintain composure. I have failed you as a mother. There is no excuse for what we did. None at all. Her genuine remorse created a ripple effect. My father, usually stoic and unemotional, reached across the table and took my hand. We hurt you deeply and repeatedly. I am ashamed of my part in it. Even Amanda, who had maintained the most defensive posture throughout, finally crumbled. I was petty and cruel, she admitted. I used my influence in the family to punish you for something that wasn't even wrong. You were right about the business loan. I wasn't ready, had no real plan. I was just angry that you saw that when no one else would say it. Ethan, who had been quiet for much of the conversation, looked me directly in the eyes. "I will never stand by silently again while you are hurt. That is my promise to you." As the emotional walls came down, we had our first truly honest family conversation in perhaps our entire lives. They acknowledged the pattern of excluding me went beyond birthdays. It was a family dynamic that had roots in childhood but had grown into something deliberately hurtful in adulthood. I laid out my conditions for moving forward. "I will unfreeze all the accounts immediately," I assured them. "The money was never the issue, but I need more than words from all of you. I need to see consistent change in how I am treated. I need to be included in family events, to have my birthday acknowledged just like everyone else's, to be treated as an equal member of this family." "And if we fail again," my father asked quietly, "then I will need to reevaluate what kind of relationship I can have with people who repeatedly choose to hurt me." I replied honestly, "I hope it doesn't come to that." As difficult as the conversation had been by its end, there was a sense that something fundamental had shifted. The truth, painful as it was, had finally been spoken aloud. Whether that would translate into real change remained to be seen, but it was a beginning. True to my word, the very next morning I unfroze all the accounts. I sent each family member a brief professional email confirming the accounts were accessible again, with no mention of our emotional conversation. I wanted them to see that I kept my promises and that my actions had never been about the money itself. The days that followed our confrontation were strange and uncomfortable. There were awkward attempts at reconnection, text messages asking how my day was going, invitations to casual family meals, even a tentative suggestion from Amanda that we might go shopping together sometime. I responded politely, but maintained emotional distance. One conversation, no matter how cathartic, couldn't erase 5 years of deliberate exclusion. I needed to see consistent change before I could fully reinvest in these relationships. I established firm boundaries about communication and expectations. I would attend family gatherings when invited, but I would no longer be the one always reaching out, always making the effort. I would continue to provide financial advice when asked, but I made it clear I expected to be treated with respect and consideration in return. Meanwhile, I focused intensely on my own healing process. With Dr. Wright's guidance, I worked through the anger and resentment that had built up over years of mistreatment. This wasn't a quick or easy process. Some days I would feel overwhelmed by fresh waves of hurt when I remembered specific instances of exclusion. Anger is a natural and appropriate response to being mistreated, Dr. Wright assured me. The goal isn't to never feel angry. It's to process that anger in healthy ways instead of letting it consume you or dictate your actions. I also invested more deeply in friendships outside my family. I had always had friends, but I realized I had kept many of them at a certain distance, reserving my deepest emotional energy for family relationships that consistently disappointed me. Now I opened up more, sharing both my struggles and my joys with the people who had consistently shown up for me. My friend Rachel, who had been urging me to confront my family for years, was particularly supportive. "I'm so proud of you for finally standing up for yourself," she told me over coffee one weekend. "It takes immense courage to confront the people who should love you most, but have hurt you instead." I also focused on self-care and personal growth in ways I had neglected before. I joined a hiking group that met on weekends, discovering a love of nature I hadn't known I possessed. I took a pottery class, finding satisfaction in creating tangible objects with my hands after years of working primarily with numbers and spreadsheets. I even started dating again after a long period of being too emotionally drained to consider romantic relationships. Most importantly, I learned to validate myself, rather than seeking approval from family members who had consistently withheld it. I celebrated my own accomplishments, acknowledged my own worth, and reminded myself daily that I deserved to be seen and included. As months passed, I noticed subtle changes in my family's behavior. Invitations became more consistent. My parents called regularly just to check in, not because they needed financial advice. Amanda made awkward but genuine attempts to include me in her children's lives. Ethan stood up for me during a family disagreement, something that had never happened before. 6 months after our confrontation, my 33rd birthday approached. I decided to plan my own celebration this year, hosting a dinner party at my apartment with my closest friends. I didn't mention it to my family, not out of spite, but because I was determined to have a joyful day regardless of their acknowledgement. The morning of my birthday, I was surprised by a delivery to my apartment, a large, professionally made cake from the city's best bakery. It was accompanied by cards signed by each family member, each containing a personal message that showed genuine thought rather than generic birthday wishes. There were also gifts, not expensive items, but thoughtful ones that demonstrated attention to my actual preferences. Books by authors I had mentioned, enjoying a gift certificate to the pottery studio, where I took classes, a beautiful scarf in my favorite shade of blue. Later that day, I received a text from my mother. "If you're free this evening, we would love to take you to dinner for your birthday. No pressure, just an invitation." I considered declining. Part of me was still wary, still protecting myself from potential disappointment. But another part recognized that healing sometimes requires taking risks, opening oneself to the possibility of both pain and reconciliation. I replied that I would come, explaining that I already had plans with friends later, but could meet for an early dinner. My mother's response was immediate and understanding. "Whatever works for you. We'll be happy to see you for however long you can stay." When I arrived at the restaurant, I was surprised to find not just my parents, but my entire family waiting. Amanda and her husband and children, Ethan and his girlfriend, even Aunt Eleanor, who had been my confidant during the worst of the conflict. The table was decorated with tasteful birthday banners, and a small pile of wrapped gifts sat at what was clearly my place. The celebration wasn't extravagant or over the top. It wasn't trying too hard to compensate for past neglect. It was simply a normal family birthday dinner, the kind most people would take for granted, but which I had been denied for years. And in its normalcy lay its greatest gift, the acknowledgement that I deserved the same consideration and celebration as any other family member. My emotions during that dinner were complex. There was appreciation for the effort they were making, a lingering hurt from the years of exclusion, and a cautious hope that this represented genuine change rather than a temporary response to having been confronted. As we ate and talked, there were moments of awkwardness, but also moments of surprising connection. My niece showed me her art project from school, proudly explaining her creative process. My father asked about my hiking group with genuine interest. Amanda complimented the presentation I had given at a finance seminar she had attended, admitting she had been impressed by my professional expertise. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And as I looked around the table at these people who had hurt me so deeply, but were now making efforts to change, I realized that healing family relationships isn't about reaching a perfect endpoint. It's about establishing a new direction, taking small steps towards something healthier. I learned many profound lessons from this painful experience. I learned that self-advocacy isn't selfish, it's necessary. For years, I had swallowed my hurt, made excuses for their behavior, and tried ever harder to earn the love and recognition that should have been freely given. All that accomplished was enabling their mistreatment to continue. I learned that confronting painful truths requires courage, but brings clarity. The family meeting had been difficult and emotional, but it had finally brought to light the resentments and dynamics that had been operating beneath the surface for years. I learned that change in relationships is possible, but it requires both parties to acknowledge the problem and commit to doing things differently. My family's behavior had only changed after I forced the issue by taking dramatic action. I learned the value of setting boundaries. By clearly articulating what I would and would not accept in terms of treatment, I had created the possibility of healthier relationships moving forward. Most importantly, I learned that my value doesn't depend on others' recognition of it. Whether my family acknowledged my birthday or not, whether they included me in gatherings or not, I was still worthy of celebration, of inclusion, of love. Today, my relationship with my family is not perfect. There are still moments of tension, old patterns that occasionally resurface. But it is fundamentally different from what it was before. It is based on mutual respect rather than obligation, on honesty, rather than avoidance, on boundaries, rather than enmeshment. I remain cautiously optimistic about continued healing while maintaining the strength to walk away if old patterns of exclusion return. So far, that hasn't been necessary. My most recent birthday was acknowledged with phone calls, cards, and a small family gathering. Not because I demanded it, but because they now understand it matters. If you are watching this and recognize your own story and mine, please know that you deserve to be seen, to be celebrated, to be included by the people who claim to love you. Silence in the face of mistreatment is sometimes an option we choose to keep the peace. But so is action, thoughtful, measured, deliberate action that says, "I will no longer accept being treated this way." You teach people how to treat you not just with your words, but with what you are willing to tolerate. It took me 32 years and 5 forgotten birthdays to learn that lesson. My hope is that by sharing my story, it might take you less time to recognize your own worth and insist on being treated accordingly. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who consistently hurt you? What happened when you finally set boundaries? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength after betrayal. And remember, your worth is not determined by how others treat you, but by the truth of who you are. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to advocate for yourself in all your relationships.